Today, we have the honor to host this forum for Texas House District 121. In addition to an in-person audience, the forum will be recorded and added to our website in the coming days. Today's forum is part of a series of nonpartisan candidate forums that Raise Your Hand Texas is hosting across the state as we head into the 89th legislative session in Austin. As a nonpartisan organization, all candidates, regardless of political affiliation, were invited to attend. Participation in tonight's forum does not indicate an endorsement on behalf of Raise Your Hand Texas. As an organization, we do not endorse candidates. Members of the audience, thank you so much for being here, for taking a little bit of time of your Thursday out evening to spend time with us and to learn more about this House District. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our moderator for the forum, Robbie Shepard, Advocacy Chair of the Northeast ISD Council PH. Please help me welcome me. Thank you, Sophie. I'm glad to be here tonight. As Sophie said, I am the Advocacy Chair from Northeast ISD, Council of PTAs. I would like to also thank you for being here today. Thank you so much. I'm sorry that both candidates couldn't be here, but I want to go ahead and get into the rules for the forum. We ask that you respond directly to the content matter in question that is posed. We ask that you refrain from referencing other candidates' past statements, and we want you to use this time to tell us more about you, your issue, and your stand for issue. Each candidate will have 3 minutes for an opening statement, to answer each question, and to provide a closing statement at the end. Have a timekeeper if that's needed in the front row, and if that's work. Sophie, I'll handle that. And now we'll have all that squared away. Let's go ahead and get started, right, with your opening statement.
Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you, Raise Your Hand Texas, Sophie, all of you for hosting this. My name is Laurel Swift, and I am really excited to be the Democratic candidate for Texas House District 121. I was born and raised in 121. I went to the same high school as both of my parents, MacArthur High School. I earned my degree in biology from UTSA, and I stayed in the district to raise my 5 amazing kids at Alamo Heights. So the values that I live by, and everything I know was formed in 121. I was a young mom. I struggled to make ends meet, and I learned very early how to be solutions-oriented, how to solve problems. I went back to college with 3 kids in tow to earn my degree when I was 30. I cared for my parents, like a lot of us at this age care for our ailing parents until they passed. And about 3 years ago, my husband John and I took in my younger brother. He suffers from schizophrenia when his group home closed unexpectedly. So I've always worked hard to help those around me, and that's why I decided to run for office. We to push back on some of the extreme policies that are being pushed on us at the state level. Today, I think we're mostly addressing education. Like I said, I'm a product of public education, and my kids are as well, and they're all successful and independent and working at that. It's awesome. And I think that what she said earlier, I say all the time, the future of this state, the future of the economy depends on a well-educated population. All of the population, not just the ones that can afford a good education. And I think we all know that. And I think when we can recognize that we are 43rd out of 50 states in per student funding, that the radical choice is to say, oh, schools aren't performing, let's implement a voucher plan. That to me is the radical decision. The conservative, common sense solution is to fully fund our public schools and pay our teachers a competitive wage so that we could have the best teachers for our kids to have the best outcomes. So I'm really appreciative of this opportunity. I hope to answer all of your questions and learn some things if there's things I don't know, because I am new at this. But I look forward to all of your questions, and thank you for letting me visit.
Okay, question 1. During the 89th legislative session, there will be a lot of familiar topics in public education. School funding, teacher workforce, the growing special education funding shortfall, now up to $1.9 billion. The ongoing discussion of our assessment and accountability systems, and of course, the school choice factor. Unfortunately, all of these major policy issues ended up stalling in the last legislative session and the 4 called subsequent special sessions.
At the time when inflation has increased by 22% since 2019, more than half schools have either adopted deficit budgets or cut funding. Our teachers are currently paid $8,800 below the national average, and our per-student funding ranks 46, over $4,000 below the national average. Lawmakers will have over $21 billion available coming into the next regular session. This includes the $4.5 billion the legislature set aside for public education funding and a new school choice program backlash. Question 1. Texas legislators file over 1,000 public education-related bills every session, and this next session will be no different. What do you think the most important education policy issues are going into the 89th regular session, and how will you help your schools and students?
The most important policies that we need to address are fully funding education, making sure our teachers make a living wage, and making sure that our teacher retirement is sound and it has an increasing cost of living adjustment as just like Social Security does. Those are first and foremost. We have the money. Our state is the second largest economy in the country. It's the 8th largest economy in the world. We have an economy the size of France. We can afford to educate our kids. The priority should be, first and foremost, it's in the Constitution that our state must provide a free education for our kids. And it behooves us all to do it well and make sure these kids are well educated. The Medicaid, the special needs, all the other extra funding, we can afford it. I mean, we had a $38 billion surplus last year. That is a structural surplus. That means we're not paying our bills. We're not paying what we owe to the people that are doing the work in this state. We could, I think James Tallarico said last week at an education forum that half of that surplus, just half of that $38 billion, would give every teacher in the state a $15,000 raise. So we can afford to do it. And those are my biggest priorities, bar none. And preventing vouchers. There is no crack in the door, in my opinion. We should not allow vouchers for any situation. If there are some schools and areas that don't have enough funding, we need to fund them better, if that's what we need. And to me, that's a less expensive, more conservative, rational way to spend that money, rather than this giant experiment of the voucher plan. There are 330,000 kids that are already in private schools. If we gave them each $8,000 voucher, that's $2.6 billion. That money should just be used to our schools. There's no reason. That's just giving all those kids and their parents an $8,000 discount on an expensive private education. So I think there isn't really, in my view, a good argument for the vouchers until we fully fund our public education system.
The last legislative session, almost every major education policy stalled due to the debate over school choice and voucher program in our state. There has obviously been a lot of political debate during the interim regarding this. How do you envision participating in the voucher discussion?
Well, I will be full-throatedly opposed to it. I started really investigating it when I was first started to run, and the money that has flown to the governor to promote the voucher plan has come from the gentleman in West Texas that want Christian schools funded with public dollars, but the majority of the money came from the billionaire Jeff Yass. And I had to ask myself, why would he do that? What is his plan? And I don't know, but I do know that Betsy DeVos, there is a push to fully privatize education. And that means create a capitalist profit motive for education in the long run. And, there's a view that competition will improve education. And I think competition is fine, and airline tickets and cereal, but I think competition creates winners and losers, and we will have a few privileged children that are winners, and then the vast majority of our kids will be on the losing end of that market. And we just have to educate the population to scream at their representatives that this cannot happen. And once it happens, it's going to be part of the genie bag. So we can thank Steve Ellison for standing up to the vouchers at last session. And that's what I plan to do next time.
The next question is going to work around teacher workforce. Prior to the last session, Governor Abbott asked the Texas Education Agency to establish a teacher vacancy task force. Texas has over 371,000 teachers in the state. In the most recent Charles Butt, Texas teachers statewide poll, 78% of the teachers said they were considering leaving the profession, a 20% increase from just 4 years ago. In addition, a recent report shows over a third of our new teachers coming into our public schools are uncertified. One of the top priorities for the next legislative session should be how our schools attract, retain, and train our teacher workforce. What do you think is the largest obstacle for schools to attracting and retaining teachers? Examples may include pay, workplace culture, overemphasis on using tests, and what can be done at the state level to fix some of these issues?
Well, obviously, we've discussed pay, and we all know that it's just not enough. So that would be priority one. The mandate after mandate after mandate that comes down with no funding behind it, that just adds to the burden of teachers has got to stop. The private schools won't have any of that, which is something else we need to, somehow that's okay for them, but not okay for us. I think that's hypocritical. I think health insurance. There's got to be a better way to work out health insurance for education. I again don't know enough. I'm new at this, but it seems to me that we have the capacity to have. Why can we do all the teachers be educated under one system? We have your retirement managed under one system. It seems like we would get a really good bargain on health insurance if we were all grouped as the hundreds of thousands of teachers that we have. I've never understood why we don't do that. Maybe there's some reason we can't, but that's something I wanted to investigate. But I know that I remember hearing that in Owl Heights, we're having a hard time getting teachers there because the health insurance costs a lot more than some of the bigger school districts if it's such a small district. And that seems like a fixable, solvable problem. But STAR testing, the fact that teachers aren't able to actually teach the material that they need to be teaching because we're teaching kids how to take a silly test that seems to be designed to trick them all, that needs to go away, in my view. It's not being mandated for private schools. I don't know why they need to be mandated for our schools as well. So those are some of the ideas that I have. And I'd be receptive to any others.
Staying on the topic of teacher workforce, what is your long-term plan to address teacher shortages beyond relying on uncertified teachers? And how will you ensure students are still getting a very high quality?
I think we obviously don't want uncertified teachers. And I think that I know there are programs that people can do emergency certifications. We need to, if we have to hire some uncertified teachers to start with, they need to be on a path to certification. We've all gone to college and had brilliant professors that can't teach, because teaching is a skill that has to be taught, and good teachers are few and far between. And I think a path to certification has to be on the table if we're having to hire uncertified teachers. But the goal is to have all certified teachers, and any suggestions that come to me that would encourage more certified teachers, that I would be for.
Switching gears a bit to another topic impacting our public schools that we've heard a lot about over the last few years is assessment. There's been a lot of discussion about overemphasis on tests. Our current A through F accountability system is entirely based on STAR to rate our schools at the elementary and middle school levels. The Travis County District Court is still deciding whether or not to allow TEA to move forward on new college career military readiness rules, which have postponed the A to F ratings for the last years. What should the accountability system be? Should our accountability system be so dependent on the STAR or any standardized test? And what changes do you believe are necessary to improve the current school accountability system, particularly standardized testing, so that it is more accurate and reflects student learning?
No, I don't think it should be based on the start. It looks to me from the outside, someone who's not an educator or a legislator. I've just been a parent for a long time. I had 5 kids, so they're 32 to 21. I've seen the change from the 32-year-old to the 21-year-old. The emphasis on the STAR test drastically have made a drastic difference in the way they were educated. It seems like it was purposeful to me. It seems like it's been like trying to make schools fail, is what it seems like it looks like to me. And as a Texan, I want my schools not to fail. I want my kids not to be failed. And I think the STAR test is a poor measurement. I think it is completely inadequate on how a state performs. It's a ridiculous test. But I think we didn't have those tests when I was a kid. They were just measurements to see where we needed to work harder and where we needed to make up a difference. And we all liked our education back then. So I'm not for that. I'm not for the A to F rating at all. I think our schools have performed exceptionally under an amazing amount of duress and a giant lack of funding. And I think we need to fully fund our schools, and we're probably really surprised at how wonderfully they do.
On the topic of standardized, do you believe that standardized testing narrows the curriculum and limits a teacher's ability to focus on critical thinking?
Yes, I do. One of the things that made me really kind of start to be aware of how much the STAR test had affected my kids' education is my youngest daughter. When she was in 7th grade, it was probably April, and I was like, "How many books have you read this year?" And she said, "Just The Outsider." And I was like, "That's the only book you've read all year in school." And she said, "That's the only one we have to read." So I emailed the teacher and I asked her, and very nicely, and she said, "Oh my God, we have to study poetry. That's all we're doing is studying poetry for the STAR test." And that's apparently a big unit in 7th grade. And so not long after that, I read an article by a woman who had her poem had been purchased to be put into the STAR test. And she said, "I would have failed the section that analyzed my poem." No one asked me what I meant by those lines. No one, they basically used her poem, made up their analysis, and then said that kids were getting things right or wrong. So yes, I think it narrows the scope of education. We only read one book in 7th grade, and we aren't discussing books. We're discussing poetry that's been analyzed by people that don't even know what the poem means. So yeah, I think it's about as land. I think the standardized testing is definitely limited the scope, and critical thinking is what we need to be teaching.
Continuing on the topic of school funding and state budget, we mentioned earlier, this legislature has held state funding levels for schools without any increase to the basic allotment or foundational operating since 2000. Double-digit inflation over the past 4 years has placed pressure on our schools. And in addition, last school year, federal stimulus funding ran out, making it a perfect storm for schools trying to continue student achievement growth through state-mandated accelerated instruction programs and high dosage. Meanwhile, the state currently has a budget surplus of at least $21 billion with an additional $23 billion in the rainy day cut. Schools would need the basic allotment to increase by $1,300 per student, simply to maintain their purchasing power. Have you talked to your school districts about what they did with their federal stimulus funds and what they're doing once the stimulus funds run out?
We didn't actually talk about the stimulus funds per se, but I have spoken with 2 or 3 of the superintendents, and yeah, they're going to have to start slashing programs. They're going to start having to let teachers go, but class sizes are going to grow. They've already grown. I understand that there's a number of classes in the Allen Whites High School that have 34, 35 kids. We all know that that's not the environment No one thinks that that's a good learning environment, and that's what's going to happen. And it's on purpose. They're doing it on purpose. The more you make the public schools difficult, the more people move out to the private schools. It's purposeful. And we're going to have to slash budgets. I mean, eventually schools will close. They'll have to sell up the properties. I mean, we've got to stop the voucher program and fund this.
Schools would need the basic allotment to increase by $1,300 per student to maintain their purchasing power through 2019. What are your funding priorities for public education?
11-1. Hearing Representative Tallarico say that every teacher can get a $15,000 raise if we spent half of the surplus from 1 year. We can afford to do this. Whether it's all in teacher salaries, the $1,000 per. We also need to make sure we start doing the allotments by involved rather than attendance. That's just a nonsense way, cutting some of the funding. If you don't fire a teacher, or when 8 kids are absent, they can't do that. So that's just an easy fix in my view. We just have to get people on board. We have to get them to understand that this is critical to the future of this state. I met with some folks that were raised in Mexico, and the wealthy kids get a good education, and the rest of the kids don't. And we don't want to be like that. And the way Texas goes is the way the nation goes with education. It's such a big state. Our school books that we approve get approved all over the country. Because we have such a large number of kids, we determine a lot of things in education. So again, yes, I will fight tooth and nail to fully fund schools, more than just the allotment, the added basic allotment. We need to do better than that. We need to subsidize and help out the school districts that can't issue a bond and raise money for extra needs. We have to be able to do that, and we have the money to do it. It's just where we decide to prioritize.
Well, let's move on to pre-kindergarten education. During the 85th legislative session in 2019, Texas made great strides to increase funding for pre-kindergarten instruction, but it still only funds pre-kindergarten students on a half-day basis. Would you support fully funding our current pre-kindergarten formulas that currently only provide half-day funding for eligible?
I would. Kids that get a solid pre-K education succeed. They do better all the way through school. Another interesting figure that I heard was the man that runs the prisons across the state said that one of the leading indicators for prison population preparation 10 years ahead, they look 10 years down the road. One of the leading indicators when they determine prison capacity 10 years down the road is third grade reading, because they're 18 to 10 years. And so if third grade reading levels are low, we plan for higher prison capacity at 10 years down the road. Pre-K prepares kids, then they're ready to learn, and they're doing better by the time they're in third grade. Pre-K, fully funded, full day pre-K would be great for the entire state, and solve a lot of problems. At really investing at that age is a much better place to invest than later on. Is kind of the way I look at it.
On that subject, and you answered this a little, but would you support expanding enrollment to a larger population of students to participate in full day pre-kindergarten? Currently, eligibility is restricted to 3 and 4-year-olds, and that are unable to speak English, or those students that qualify for free and or reduced.
I would obviously need to learn how much, all of this would cost. Would it be possible? But when I look at a $38 billion surplus in 1 year, yes, I would absolutely like to I would be open to that option, and I would push for it as much as I could if I thought we could afford it.
Our final topic will be an issue that is top of mind of many people, especially parents. School thing. During the 88th regular session, House Bill 3 requires at least one armed security officer to be present during irregular school hours at each district campus, providing a funding that increases that existing allotment from $9.72 per student to $10 per student, and provided an additional $15,000 per campus. Have you talked with your school districts or campus principals about how this new provision is being implemented, and what else needs to be done to help our schools?
Yes, they said it was definitely not enough to cover having the security guard at every single school. So they're having to use other money to cover that, which isn't fair. When you dish out a mandate to a school district, you should pay for it. It's the responsibility of the state. I don't, this isn't a discussion about gun regulation, but I am a common sense. I'm a responsible gun owner. My husband owns guns. We keep them in a gun safe, and I have a freezer full of medicine. But I think common sense regulation of guns makes sense. An 18-year-old should not be able to buy an AR-15. We shouldn't open carry. Seems unnecessary and frightening and dangerous. I think our fetishization of guns is detrimental, and I think that's what's affecting our schools. And a lot of it is just this polarization. But I think that having a security guard on every campus is a great idea, but the state needs to pay for it, make sure they can afford it.
Okay, well, that's going to end our question session, but I would like to give you time for it.
Well, y'all can probably tell I am new at this, so I appreciate your patience. I'm sure there are plenty of things that I will learn that will make this, these decisions more difficult. But I do know that the priority is our kids, and that we all benefit when all of our kids do better. And that is the main focus. That, to me, is the job of a state, is to make sure that the people in the state are successful and taken care of and can contribute to society. And I'm doing this because I want to serve the public. I'm not doing this for glory. I quit a good job to make $7,200 a year if I get lucky and win. But I really want to do this because I really care. And I've raised 5 kids. I know how hard it is. And we're just making it harder and harder. And I think that as our state legislature can do better than this. And that's the reason that I'm running. And I'm honored and excited to have the support of Steve Allison. I think a lot of us agree more than we disagree, even if we're from different parties. I think most of us are very similar and we have the same wants and needs. And that is how I plan to legislate and how I plan to work with folks in the government, in the legislature. And I would appreciate your vote and appreciate your support, and happy to answer any questions and give you my card if anybody has questions for later. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being here today. I sincerely want to take some time to thank all of y'all for attending, for spending your evening with us today. But as was mentioned, 10% of public school students in the entire United States are educated here in Texas. So this is why it's so important to have the strongest possible public education system. Of course, please remember to vote. Early voting begins on Monday and it runs through Friday, November 1st. Election day, it's Tuesday, November 5th. And I just want to say thank you for being part of the conversation, stay engaged, join us, and the future of Texas is in our public schools. And we're grateful to spend some time. Be safe and safe travels home. Thank you.